So, in case you missed the previous video, we are building a grand piano to race in the Red Bull Soapbox competition, dressed as Sir Elton John. We finished the frame and are now ready to start building the platform and of course the piano. So we started out with making a cardboard template to make sure it fits before possibly wasting a whole sheet of plywood. And with the template transferred, it's time to cut out all the weird shapes. The base for the soapbox is entirely made up out of one sheet of plywood. I did cut it down in the middle though, just so the front of the platform would sit above the front wheels, so the steering range would not be compromised trying to fit the front wheels through the plywood, if that makes sense. Now that does leave me with this awkward raised part of the platform, but I've got an idea to spice this up, and you'll see that in a minute. I'm drilling holes for the bolts to attach the plywood to the steel frame. I've got a bunch of these M12 bolts all around the platform that are going through the frame. Now this makes for a really sturdy and bouncy base for the piano. As for the risen front part of the platform, I had to add some extra tabs to the frame to attach a couple of support blocks onto. I added some side pieces to the front part of the platform to make it more rigid and to be able to connect it to the back half of the platform. And I cut these side pieces in this stair-like pattern, and by adding some threads, it kinda looks like the stairs to a big Broadway stage. It's a silly little detail, but I'm here to impress the Red Bull judges, and hopefully these details will matter. With the platform done, you can see that the driver still has a comfortable space to sit. And we can now start with the piano and the bench where I will sit on the back of the carts. I'm assembling a basic box for the seating, checking the height before cutting the side pieces as legs. And to add a little more detail, I'm adding a rocket design to the legs as a subtle nod to the absolute banger Rocket Man. Now once the legs are cut out and the edges are rounded over, I screwed them onto the seat and I now have this piano bench to sit on and hold onto for my dear life while we go downhill. So I got the base of the soapbox pretty much done. The driver will sit here, I will sit here on this bench. Now all I have to do is make a big piano that covers the whole thing and decorate the soapbox. Now I only have about 1 week left before the race, so let's just get going. I started by drawing out all the measurements of the piano onto the base. And just to be sure, the proportions and the positioning all look right. And once I was happy with it, I started to frame out the sides of the piano by cutting all these straight little pieces and gluing and nailing them together. Now for the curved pieces, I drew some lines on a piece of plywood and cut them out so I can complete the piano's silhouette with the straight pieces from earlier. By adding some small studs as spacers, the pieces are now ready to be screwed together.
Yeah.
And with this final piece in the back, the piano contour is now complete. I've made this part removable with these little hooks. Now this way the driver can easily enter the piano through the back. And this is also the same part where the piano keys will be mounted onto. But you'll see that later. Now with the frame ready, it's time for some paint before we move on.
No.
I've got this old piece of railing from my staircase and thought these spindles would make for a great set of piano legs.
To finish the outside of the piano, I got some strips of this 3mm thick MDF, which already has a white backing. So it's really flexible and I should be able to just curve this in the shape of the piano and nail it in place.
Now just to add some more visibility for the driver, I'm adding in a small window with this piece of plexi. The most difficult part of adding this paneling is keeping it in place, but with a lot of clamps it's quick work with the nail gun. And for the smaller pieces I'm leaving them oversized so I can come back with a router and a flush trim bit to create the contour. This very small radius was the hardest part to get right. The paneling kept breaking when I forced it into place. It did work out eventually, but I had to use an excessive amount of nails. Now to finish off the bench and to add a little comfort for myself, I'm cutting down some old pillows to use the stuffing for the bench top. And as a finishing touch, I'm adding some white trim around the cushion. Now this looks like an expensive bench, even if it's made out of scraps. So now it's finally time to add the legs onto the piano and stand the whole thing up for the very first time. Unfortunately, by doing this only now, I've noticed the whole thing is very unstable, which shouldn't be such a big surprise in hindsight, actually. Now I don't want to change too much about the current look of everything, so the only thing I could come up with as a quick fix is to make some wider and stronger legs for the piano. Now these will be screwed onto the piano and bolted onto the frame and sit behind the current white legs. And with painting the platform as well as the reinforced legs a dark green, I'm hoping they won't stick out as much and the piano will still look elegant. Now the platform will be covered in fake plants and flowers later on, as a reference to Sir Elton John's appearance on The Muppet Show in 1972. Where his white piano was staged in a jungle setting which just looked really cool. As for the lid of the piano, it needs to be very light, So I cut out the shape out of the same 3mm thick white MDF and added some wood bracing for rigidity. I let the glue dry overnight, and I didn't use any nails because I didn't want them to be visible at the top surface. But the glue should be strong enough. I'm adding another white strip on the sides to give it a little more body. And just like that, the piano cover can be mounted to the piano with none other than a piano hinge, of course.
Now, this might actually be the very first time that I'm using a piano hinge to build a real piano.
Now, the very last thing this piano needs are the keys. I've cut some grooves in a piece of white melamine to create the white keys, and I've cut some leftover pieces of dark laminate to create the black keys. Another great band, by the way. I'm using CA glue to stick the keys together. I'm not quite sure if the keys are in the right order, and I'm probably even missing some, but it does look like a keyboard to me. And with some more CA glue, I'm attaching the keyboard to the body. And that's it!
Alright, now the Soapbox is pretty much done. The next step is to disassemble the whole thing to get it to fit through the door. And then once outside, we'll have to reassemble it and put it on the trailer.
Now this is the final day before the race, and so we've got it done right on time. As for the final assembly, everything went smoothly and we're ready to go. We're taking all of this extra decoration with us to add to the cart on the day of the race. And off we go! Also a big shout out to my girlfriend who took inspiration from Elton's iconic winged jacket and made me an equally awesome costume and this badass horned helmet from scratch. And you'll see more of her work in the next video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll take this piano Soapbox on an actual Formula 1 track for the big race.